Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be a mid-year check-in to tell you about all of the bookish goals. Am I trying to reach? What am I trying to reach? Am I reaching them? Etc. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a chatty one to tell you about my bookish goals that I've had so far in the year and whether I'm meeting those goals, and sort of like chat to you about how things are going in terms of my reading year so far. So that's sort of the plan. We're just gonna sit and have a chat. Let me know in a comment down below how your reading year has been so far. I would love to know, and then I'm just going to be sharing my experiences so far with you. So 2023 as a reading year is definitely going a little bit better again than last year or the year before that. Definitely in 2021, I hit a massive reading slump, and I only read about 11 books in the entire year. Most of it in the first couple of months in the year, and towards the end of the year I just stopped reading altogether. And last year I definitely wanted to pick up the pace, and I was able to do that. And then this year it's been sort of on and off very much. I'm not on track for finishing 50 books as I had planned on Goodreads, but that's always been an aim that I find very difficult to reach anyways, but I'll get to my yearly reading goal in a minute. Because it doesn't really matter for the first half of the video, because we're just going to be reflecting on how things have been going. So this year so far, in terms of reading numbers wise, I'm a little bit behind. I don't mind that. I just set the goal of 50 books because I want to have something to strive for, but I'm not going to use it as like, I need to meet that goal, and if I feel like a failure if I don't meet it. So I've read 16 books so far. After I film this video, I'm going to sit down and probably finish number 17. I'm in the midst of an audiobook, so we're doing pretty well. In recent years, I've definitely been mixing reading a physical book and doing an audiobook for like those early morning startups, unwinding at the end of the night kind of moments. Sometimes even when I'm like putting away laundry or I'm cleaning my house, I will also just pop on an audiobook and listen to it. And that's been very helpful in upping the numbers of books I read in a year. And I was very good at making this combination again at the start of the year. But I also find that I can only do that when I have the mental headspace to be having 2 books on the go, and especially in the springtime when work got a little bit crazy, I felt I no longer had the headspace for this. Plus, I try to always walk into work. I live close enough to my workplace that I can actually walk there, but because of some back issues I've been having, I'm taking my bike now, because if I bike, my back doesn't hurt, but if I walk, it does. So I have not had like the 30-minute one-way commute a day where I can listen to audiobooks as I'm walking into work. So that's sort of been like reading time that I was like using designated to like do some reading. That sort of went away from like April and May. So I definitely haven't been reading as much as I'd like to because of it. However, I did manage to do something that I have been wanting to do for years. It's right beside me, right here. Right here. The Brandon Sanderson Mistborn trilogy has been finished. I started reading the books at the end of 2022, and I definitely wanted to finish the series and see where it went. And now that I've finished the entire trilogy, I'm like, do I want to read any other Brandon Sanderson books? And at the moment, I'm sort of on 2 minds about it, because I did enjoy the series okay, but the way that people have been talking about Brandon Sanderson books for years in the BookTube, Book Talk, and Bookstagram communities, where it's just been praised into the high heavens as like some of the best fantasy that people have ever read. And I read it and I was like, if this is what everybody thinks is this good, then I have a very different idea of what I would want from a fantasy story. So for me, it was a bit of a disappointment how I felt I was being preached to as I was reading these books, and I only found out after I have finished the series that Brandon Sanderson himself is Mormon. So that might explain some of the religious undertones in the Mistborn trilogy for sure, but I had never, in all the years that I have been watching BookTube, I had anybody mention the religious undertones that are especially in the final book. Everybody just saying how the magic system was interesting and how the characters were so well developed. And the reason why I kept reading the series was the characters for sure. The reason why I was so invested was because I wanted to know what happened to Vin, to all of my favorites. I loved Sazet. Is that how you pronounce his name? I never know with these fantasy stories how to pronounce any of the names. I have them in my head how I would pronounce it, but I'm not sure that that's the way you are supposed to pronounce them. But I just loved so many of the dynamics, but a lot of those books were also just people standing around talking and not doing much of anything. So, and then the resolution of some of the storylines, I felt like, not entirely my vibe. So this is another very much hyped about fantasy series. I read the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin last year that I've heard nothing but raving reviews about as well, that I also didn't love as much as everybody else. So now I'm like, maybe I just like other things in books than most people who are either very vocal or who are very popular on these online channels. I definitely have been raised in a different way when it comes to reading, and for me it's not about aesthetics. I don't want my books to necessarily just be pretty. I don't need it to have a million trigger warnings because I've read I read American Psycho without knowing what it was about. Bret Easton Ellis, American Psycho, years ago. That's been, I think, a decade. And that's a traumatizing book to read, let me tell you. If you've ever read it, you know what I'm talking about. The rat scene. I could only read that book on sunny days like today, midday, because if I read it too close to going to bed, I would have nightmares. It was that terrible. And I was like, we didn't used to get trigger warnings. Why do we need them? So I don't mind it if books have characters that do questionable things and that I would definitely disapprove of in my day-to-day life. But they're books, and they're sometimes trying to teach you things, and they're trying to give you viewpoints of how things might work in different societies, or different experience that people have had. And I think that if you take that perspective, then all these trigger warnings, I'm not sure if that's really adding anything to our reading experience. Another thing that's really stood out to me so far in 2023 is that I haven't read a single 5-star book. I know, I'm not a 5-star giver, you could say. I know that, if it's not 5 stars, then I'm like, no, 5 stars are only for books that I find mind-blowingly good, that are somehow life-changing. I've definitely changed ratings in the past where I've taken a book from 4-star to 5 stars after, the book just not leaving me for another 3 weeks or sometimes even months after I've read it. And then I know that it's a 5-star read. Those are the books that I know I will reread at some point in time, that I want to go back to. So 5-star to me is a very, very small category of books that I think need to go in there. So most of it is 3 stars usually if I think, this is okay. And a lot of books I feel are okay. They're entertaining, they're easy to read, they're fun. But just because it's fun doesn't mean that it needs to get 5 stars to me. If I think this was a good book, it gets 4 stars. If I think, nah, wouldn't recommend, then it gets the 2 stars, and I rarely give a 1 star as well because someone did put in effort, someone did try to come up with a story. So 1-star books are really for things like that I'm like, how did this get published? Which I don't very often feel about books either. So for me, it's sort of always that 3 and 4-star category is definitely much more important for me. And so far, I haven't read anything this year that I have found was life-changing. And I was hoping the Mistborn trilogy would be that I was like, oh, this is the best fantasy series I've ever read, like so many other people, and it just wasn't for me. So maybe the Mistborn trilogy wasn't the right Brandon Sanderson series to start with for me. Maybe I need to read Way of Kings, Stormlight Archives, that's what the series is called. Maybe I should start reading that. Maybe I should read some of his standalones to get more of a feel for his writing, because I think the Mistborn trilogy was one of the first things he wrote. So hopefully his writing has gotten different over time as well. I don't know. What do you guys, if you've read a lot of Brandon Sanderson, can you help me find what to read next? And if you are also familiar with people in your environment who have read the Brandon Sanderson Mistborn trilogy and have felt, well, I liked it, but it's not the mind-blowing, life-changing fantasy story that I was hoping it to be. Maybe I just had really high expectations going into it because I've heard so many people raving about it. Then that could be it as well. But yeah, so far my reading year has been mid. It's just been very mediocre, and that has definitely also sort of gone into like why I sometimes have entire stretches of weeks where I don't read. I wouldn't call them slumps, especially when my back started to play up a lot in May. I was just too tired to, like, because I've been having back issues for years, and it's really been playing up a lot in the past 2, and I can barely function some days, so let alone read a book. And it was in the midst of Red Sister when that happened. But the funny thing was, a couple of weeks ago, I was actually like, I committed, and I sat down and I read the whole book, and I actually really enjoyed it. So it's not the book, and it's not how much I enjoy a book, why I may stop reading for a little bit. For me, it's definitely had been like health issues and just not feeling my best. And I'm slowly starting to find my way back again, which is lovely because I will have summer break from the end of July until the end of August, which usually is my biggest reading moment, you could say. Very often summer break is the moment where I just read a lot more, and that also goes into what I was saying at the start. I always set my reading goal for the year on 50 because I know I can easily read 20 to 30 books a year is like my natural average. If I don't make an effort, if I just read and I don't make too much of an effort, I get to 20 to 30 books, and that's what I've been happy with for years. I don't have to be the person that reads 100 books. I actually, when I first set a reading goal, I think in 2016 it may have been, that was the first time I set myself a Goodreads reading goal. And I was trying to make that goal, and I felt I was therefore picking books that were shorter so I could get the goal. Whereas sometimes I just want to read the 750-page book, you know what I mean? So if that means you're only reading books that are 300 pages just so you can hit a goal, to me that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I always set the goal on 50, but I haven't made the goal since that first year that I set the goal. Every year it's sort of like 40, 42, 45-ish. That's where I get to. And it's very often because in the summertime, I get to sort of catch up with all of the reading that I wasn't able to do in the spring, summer season, early summer season. Because very often, in case you didn't know, I work in education. So second semester stress, I don't know what it is, but it's always the first half of the year that I read the least. For some reason, something happens. I know in my personal life, a lot of my friends and family have birthdays in like March and April. So I'm usually really busy and just being out and about, and I don't have a lot of time to read. And there's a lot of dance things going on then. So I'm just usually with other people, and I don't have as much time to read. Whereas in the summer, a lot of my friends are on summer vacation. I go on summer vacation. I take books with me when I go on vacation. And it just gives me a lot of time to just sit down with a good book. And spring, summer, like from like March till May, it's very often just not in the cards for me because things get really busy. We have a lot of exams, a lot of grading. And the last thing I want to do after reading through pages of student work is to read even more. There's a limit to what my brain can do in terms of reading in a day. And since I've always taught things like languages and writing, I'm always reading a lot, but not necessarily like books on my shelves, but what students produce. And that definitely goes into it as well. And then usually, you know, start of the school year is a bit slower. So I think I actually do most of my reading between like July and October. Those 4 months is where I do most of my reading. And then like Christmas break, that's usually where most of my reading happens, I think. And then maybe January, because January tends to be quite quiet. But usually in like December and January is like the times when I get sick. So I think it just kind of goes into like the way I live my life and how things happen to me, whether I reach that goal, yes or no. So yeah, for me, 50 books a year has been my goal for a while. There's a couple of book series I wanted to get to. The Red Sister trilogy is definitely one that I think I now want to finish. I quite enjoyed that first book. I would love to see where that story goes. But I also don't want to have too many series on the go in one sitting because my brain cannot compute. So I think I'm definitely in the midst of a palette cleanser first because I read 2 fantasy stories back to back. And that's also not something I like. So I'm now reading a bit of a mystery thriller kind of thing. And then we're going to go back into some fantasy, I'm sure. I hope to be able to finish that book today. And then hopefully before summer break, I can finish another 1 or 2 books. That would be the aim. I will be doing another wrap-up for you in August, I think. I'm not sure it's going to happen this month because I don't have space in my filming schedule to put it somewhere. So early August, you can expect a wrap-up. By that time, I will have read enough to update you because I wasn't reading much in May. In fact, I didn't finish a single book within May, I think. I really need to get back into the swing of things. So yeah, that's what's been going on for me in terms of reading. Let me know in a comment down below what your reading year has been like. I would love to know. And for now, I hope you'd like to thumbs up this video. I will be back with a new video next week. So if you'd like to stay tuned for that and hope to see you in my next one. Bye-bye.